In this week's Parshas Chaye Sara, when Rivka is taken back from Aram Naharayim to Eretz Yisrael by Eliezer to be the wife of Yitzchak Avinu, we're told in the pasuk that Vatisa Rivka eseineha vatera es Yitzchak, that Rivka lifted her eyes, she saw the individual who was Yitzchak Avinu, albeit unclarified to her that indeed it was him. Vatipomi al hagomal, and she effectively lowered herself or fell off of the camel upon which she was riding. Vatomer elo Eved, when she turned to Eliezer and she asked him, Miho ish halazeh halech basadela persenu, who is that man who is approaching us? Ayemer ha'eved hu adoni, to which Eliezer responds, he is my master, he is Yitzchak. Vatikachat so'ifat discuss, she took her veil and she covered her face. Chazal tell us that this moment was very defining, for indeed throughout their entire marriage, she was awed by Yitzchak, and she very much lived within his shadow. And we need to ask ourselves, what was so awesome about Yitzchak? Prior to even having shared a word with him, she felt this sense of awe, of reverence. She hadn't yet spoken to him. She didn't know whether he was brilliant. She didn't know whether he was funny. She didn't know whether he was polite. What caused that sense of yira? And if you look at the very pasuk immediately prior to her lowering herself from the camel, the pasuk tells us, "Vayetze Yitzchak l'suach basada lifnas arev," that Yitzchak Avinu went out into the field to daven mincha. He was koveya. He established the institution of mincha, and evidently she saw him davening. And when she saw him davening, from that moment onward, she very much was in awe of him. The Gemara Megillah tells us, Rabbi Yochanan, b'chol makom she'ata mosei gedulasa shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, wherever you have a description of the greatness of the Almighty, whether it is within the Torah Kadosha or in Nevi'im or in Ksuvim, sham there, in the very descriptions of the same psukim, ata mosei anvesanuso, you find HaKadosh Baruch Hu displaying a sense of humility. And it's not simply that we are being told that God is not only great, inestimably great, but he is humble as well. But rather, I think the Gemara is telling us that part of the defining greatness of Hashem Yisbarach is to be seen in his humility and his humbleness, in his caring for the Yasam and the Amana, for the orphan and the widow, in his raising up those who are downtrodden, in his picking up those who feel so small. And when Rivka was taken by Eliezer back to meet Yitzchak, and the very first exposure that she has to him is seeing him at a distance, standing before HaKadosh Baruch Hu in prayer, she understands, though she comes from a house of idolatry, that the definition of prayer is total hispatlos, is thorough submission to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, rendering oneself as nothing, standing before the Almighty, coming to beseech him for everything that we need and to thank him for everything that he has given us. Prayer, tefillah, indeed engenders the greatest of all if we are only fortunate enough to stand in the presence for one of whom, before whom, an individual who properly and appropriately recognizes the challenge of proper prayer, the power of proper prayer, and the connection through which we establish a sense of yachas, a sense of association between ourselves and Hashem Yisbarach. That indeed is the art of prayer. If we are so lucky to be exposed to such tefillah through others, why, what an impression it makes upon us. Have a wonderful Shabbos.